Though it's proving to be much more than just Pokémon with guns, Palworld is still having a hard time distancing itself from accusations of plagiarism. The game's design aesthetic is strikingly similar to the franchise that inspired it, and many Pokémon fans are crying foul, particularly over these familiar-looking characters.
Fine. All right. Come at me with those dreams of yours.
Okay, so the Dark Mutant, as it's codenamed in the game's files, isn't technically in the game just yet, but that hasn't stopped it from being one of the most controversial copycats in Palworld. This leaked Pal's character model was discovered by data miner Brian Cousins, at which point fans immediately noted its similarities to Mega Mewtwo Y. In particular, its swishy ponytail, three-fingered limbs, and jutting hips make it one of the closer doppelgangers in Palworld. Some gamers have theorized that the character may have ultimately been cut from Palworld because it was too close to Mewtwo, but precise details about the Dark Mutant's purpose remain scarce. Anubis' look is clearly inspired by its namesake, the dog-headed Egyptian guardian of the underworld. This can be seen in both its canine features and its pharaoh-style sash. However, Anubis also bears a bit more than a passing resemblance to the legendary Pokémon Super Smash Bros. Star, Lucario. Though Anubis certainly has more human-like hands, the jewel in the center of the creature's chest and its angular canine head have been pointed out by suspicious Pokémon players as the most noticeable similarities between the two. Much like Lucario, Anubis also favors high-speed combat scenarios, with its Guardian of the Desert ability enabling it to quickly dodge enemy attacks. Some gamers have argued that Anubis' look has more in common with Lucario than many classic depictions of the Egyptian Anubis himself. Leafeon, the grass-type evolution of Eevee, is a real favorite in the fan art community. There's just something about a little fox with leaves for ears that makes even the most jaded Pokémon fans smile. That may be why the pal called Lifmunk has seriously gotten on some players' nerves. This little creature is commonly seen in Palworld promo material, with an automatic handgun in its mitts, which definitely helps to distract from its physical similarities to Leafeon, namely its shiny eyes, teensy little snout, leafy ears, and overall color palette have made even some Palworld defenders take pause, even if the designs aren't exactly one-to-one. Tocotoco is a winged pal with an explosive temper, as well as the design and color scheme remarkably similar to Xatu, a psychic Pokémon modeled after ancient totem poles. Despite Tocotoco's helmet of feathers and longer beak, this is another one that's pretty difficult for Palworld players to argue with. Some have even pointed out that it might make more sense to incorporate Tocotoco's exploding abilities into its design in some way. To this end, one fan on X replaced the markings on Tocotoco with a more armored look, making for a more medieval-looking pal. Electabuzz is tough enough to have served in the Great Pokémon War, at least according to fan theories, so it makes sense that Palworld would have its own beastie analog in Grizzbolt. Both creatures pack an electrical punch, hitting enemies with lightning and claws. The black zigzag markings on the two creatures' yellow bodies also draw immediate comparisons between this pal and Lieutenant Surge's biggest bruiser. As an amusing aside, a number of fans have also found parallels between Grizzbolt's design and that of Studio Ghibli's beloved children's character, Totoro. As one might expect, this has made Grizzbolt an early go-to character for Palworld fan art. There's something quite elegant about Broncherry, from its piercing blue eyes to its pink eyelashes and flowery color. Even the way it carries itself with its long neck and snout usually pointing skyward suggests that this is one fancy pal. Unfortunately, some Pokémon fans have argued that Broncherry might have gotten its finest features from Gen 2's Meganium and Gen 5's Serperior. Namely, the aforementioned floral accents and the pal's serpentine head and neck feel quite reminiscent of the two evolved grass-type starters. Jormuntide is a serpentine dragon pal that rises from the deep and scares the devil out of passers-by. It also boasts shockingly blue scales and a white segmented underbelly. Toss in red eyes and some long whisker-like antennae, and you have a sea dragon that's highly reminiscent of Gyarados. Adding fuel to the fire is the fact that there's an all-red variant of this pal called Jormuntide Ignis, which will no doubt remind Pokémon fans of the shiny red Gyarados. Grintale was one of the first pals to raise a commotion when Palworld was nearing launch. Though possibly inspired by the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland, Pokémon fans have also noted that it shares a few obvious characteristics with the Galarian version of Meowth, introduced in Pokémon Sword and Shield. In fact, some have outright accused the developers of yoinking the face off of Meowth and transplanting it onto Grintale. Meanwhile, fans of Palworld have pointed out another possible Studio Ghibli inspiration for Grintale: the eerily adorable cat burst from My Neighbor Totoro. The Pal's glowing eyes and toothy grin certainly do give off a similar vibe. Cinderace's sporty attire and fiery attitude has earned it quite an online following, with some pointing to the Score Bunny to Cinderace evolutionary line as one of the best starters in the series. That's probably why Verdash is a particularly infuriating pal in the eyes of Pokémon fans. Its rabbit-like silhouette and cuffed pants make it look like a grass-type ringer for the beloved fire Pokémon, which fans have argued doesn't make a whole lot of sense. After all, Cinderace's design and moves are based around a distinct sports aesthetic, whereas nothing about Verdash's attacks or PAL deck entry suggests a connection to soccer or any other pastime. On the other hand, a number of Palworld defenders have argued that the biggest point of comparison here is simply the fact that both characters look like rabbits. So this one annoyed Pokemon fan on X remarked, quote, "Game Freak doesn't own rabbits, but they sure as hell own Cinderace's design."